Hello, hello, everyone. We will get started in a moment. While we're waiting, will you please drop your name, the role that you have, and where you are joining us from in the chat box while we wait? We have it coming in. We have them from Texas, Florida, New Jersey, North Carolina, New York. We got them everywhere. Connecticut, Maryland, Wyoming, Arkansas, Minneapolis, Virginia. So we have them. As you're coming in, please read the slide and we say hello, and we'll start in about another minute. Right. Let's see, they're still coming in. Buffalo, New Hampshire, Indianapolis. Right. Thank you, Cleveland, Ohio. Thank you all for joining us today. And thank you for putting your role and your name and where you're joining us from. So we're not going to hold your patience long, and we are going to go ahead and begin.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we are going to be talking about the magic of interactive modeling. This is the first webinar in our series for the year. We are so excited to be here with you tonight. Whether it's your first time hearing about interactive modeling or you're already using it, we hope you gain something helpful from this webinar this evening. Interactive modeling is an effective technique that's used for engaging students in a timely, active way in order to set them up in order to do a procedure or a routine accurately. And we'll talk all about that some more throughout this evening together. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Alyssa Bruner. I saw I have some neighbors in the chat. I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C. I saw a few D.C., Maryland, and Virginia folks. So hi, welcome. I currently work for CRS, for the Center for Responsive Schools, full-time as a curriculum and instructional designer. But before that, I taught first, second, and fifth grades. And I'm joined here tonight by my colleague, Amber.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Amber Searles, and I am joining you from South Carolina, the South. And I am also a curriculum and instructional designer for the Center for Responsive Schools. And in the past, I have taught grades 5th through 8th. So middle school is my focus. So as we get acclimated in our webinar, there's a few things that we want to talk to you about so that it can be interactive for you. Here are some webinar tips. If you are experiencing your computer is lagging or it's slow, close programs and browsers to maximize your bandwidth. And then feel free, if it continues to lag, you may enter and you may exit and re-enter using the link that we sent you. Also, we have the Q&A feature. for questions about logistics, or if you have specific questions that you have for us as the panelists. We also have the chat feature. When you use the chat feature, we ask to make positive comments and connections with your colleagues. And of course, this will be recorded. So if your colleagues told you, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to make it, but I signed up, they will get a recording, and you will too, shortly after this webinar.
I'd like to point out that the recording will also come with any of the links that we share with you this evening. So if you miss anything, don't worry, those will come as well. So now the learning goals for this evening are displayed for you to take a moment and review. And you can go ahead and read through these and just choose one that you are going to focus on tonight. You can do this just kind of silently, or you can type it in the chat if you feel inspired. But take a moment to review these and choose a focus. All right, 30 more seconds to choose that focus. Okay, so now that you've chosen your focus, I'm going to ask you to do a little activity with me. So you'll now see a blank screen, and that's intentional because I'm going to ask you to consider what you would do if I asked you to draw a star on top of a square. So utilizing this space on the screen, picture what you would do if I asked you to draw a star on top of a square. If you have a pen and paper near you and you want to write it, go ahead and feel free. Hopefully you've had a chance to think about what that might look like. So some of you might have pictured a flat square with a star in the middle of the square, like this. Some of you might have pictured a flat square with a star north of it, like this. And some more of you might have pictured something like a 3D square box like this with a star sitting on top of it. So these directions were intentionally vague to make the point that there were different ways to interpret these directions. Even though it was seemingly quite simple, just draw a star on top of a square, it looked different for different people. And if everyone was together in person, some people might have started to feel a little confused by those directions. Some people might have started looking around at their neighbors, looking to see what they did, to see if maybe they didn't quite understand accurately, and started to feel discouraged or stressed out by that. Others might have completed the task, but then feeling confident with what they did, looked around and saw it look different for others. And again, they might have felt confused and stressed. And still more, some people might have just sat there stuck and confused about how to continue because the directions just weren't quite explicit enough. And that can be really challenging. So we're going to ask you to type in the chat now, how did you feel when you were given those directions to draw a star on top of a square? You may have felt like some of those examples that I gave, or it might have been slightly different. Yeah, I see some people say confused, unsure. Probably like, what is she talking about? We're at a webinar about education. I'm not here to draw. Oh, some took it, some said that they were confident. Okay. What tools do I need? Waiting for more. Very sure of myself until I show the answers. Yeah. So even if you were feeling very confident, even if you were like, it's easy, I got this, when you saw the different examples that were given, kind of made it confusing, right? It felt like, oh, I knew what I was supposed to do, but now there are these different interpretations, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do in this setting. And that's exactly what can happen in your classroom. When the directions aren't explicit, it can result in various different iterations of the same end goal. And even though they're all accurate, it can create confusion and cause frustration. This same thing can happen in your classroom when students are asked to execute various routines. They might all have a different mental image of how something should be done, but in your class community, it's important for them to know that there are certain things that should be done in one certain way to create a safe and predictable learning environment and to make sure everyone's on the same page. When you do this, when you set out those expectations explicitly, when you explain to them exactly what it looks like in your classroom and you have that shared consensus of what that procedure looks like in your classroom, it ensures that it's an equitable space for all students, regardless of their prior experiences, regardless of that mental image that they started with. It cuts out that confusion and it makes everyone feel safe and welcome in your classroom. And that is what interactive modeling can do for your students.
Sorry, you guys. So now that you have had the opportunity to think about the benefits of interactive modeling, let's talk about what interactive modeling is. It's a straightforward technique that's very effective for teaching procedures and routines in which there is one specific way for it to be done, such as walking safely in the hallway, and social and academic skills, such as listening respectfully and highlighting important ideas in a text. Interactive modeling should be used at the beginning of the school year in order to establish a clear mental image of what is expected in the classroom. It can also be used at a point throughout the school year to remind your students the expectations. It has built-in steps that help students put behavioral expectations in their own words. Student observations and practice plus teacher feedback is a powerful combination for learning and remembering. The exact steps of interactive modeling may differ depending on the developmental needs of your students. However, whether your students are younger or older learners, the steps of interactive modeling always include modeling the desired behavior, asking what students notice, and allowing for them to practice. Take a look at these steps. For younger students, educators want to create opportunities for their students to see the routine and procedures modeled multiple times to support greater understanding. There are 7 steps that you can use for this process with this age group. Take a moment to look at the 7 steps for the younger students. To meet the developmental needs of older students, the steps of interactive modeling allow more time for students to collaborate, practice, and share with one another. For these students, interactive modeling has 4 steps. And here are the 4 steps for the older students to fit their developmental needs. And I'll give you a moment to look at those. So I would like for you to reflect on this following response that you see on the PowerPoint slide. Now that you have learned about the steps of interactive modeling, think about how you might use these steps to teach routines and procedures in your classroom. You can reflect using the chat box, or you can just do a silent reflection. We have some reflections coming in through the chat. Some want to do interactive modeling to teach transitions and how to do I do, you do, and we do. Unpacking and cleaning up, that is a very, very important one. That's for all grade levels. All grade levels could appreciate that. Small group versus whole group routines. How to use materials, especially how to use scissors safely or the microscope if they are in the science class. Continue to bring in your responses. We love all of these responses.
We'll have a chance to see more of these responses as the evening continues, or it's evening where I am, might not be where you are, but as we continue with our time together. So go ahead and read those, but don't feel like you need to really hold on to absolutely everything, because we'll have a chance to do a little more with that. Also, I saw a few participants were asking if we could go back to the steps. We're not going to go back to them right now just to make sure that we're staying on time, but you'll get the recording of this. And you'll also get some other resources in just a little bit that'll have those steps there for you. So don't worry, we're going to give those back to you. Now that I've got all of that out of the way, here is a quote about routines and procedures that I would love for you to take a moment to read and reflect on. So interactive modeling really does make time for learning. And it's really great at the beginning of the year to set these procedures and routines up so that you go slow to go fast. Interactive modeling is a great way to teach any skill that needs to be done in one specific way, whether that's for safety, for efficiency, or a specific reason that you as a teacher think it's very important that it's done in that one specific way. And when we talk about routines and procedures, the procedures are the steps that students must take in order to be successful with that routine or skill that we're referencing. And we often talk about them hand in hand because the procedures are the steps for the routines that they need. When you're thinking of introducing interactive modeling, it's really important for you to consider a few things. The first thing is to not make any assumptions that your students already know how to do the things that contribute to a calm, orderly environment, or that they already have those necessary skills. Just like with our activity earlier, drawing a star on top of a box or a square, it felt simple. But if I made the assumption that everyone's would look the same, I would have been wrong. If we do that in the classroom, if we make the assumption that everyone knows what lining up looks like in our classroom, we might be wrong. So instead of making that assumption, we can explicitly teach the expectations, procedures, and routines. And these things will allow students to be autonomous, to be cooperative, and to be productive members of their school and class community. And really taking the time to explicitly teach this ensures an equitable classroom. It makes sure that a student, even if they've never seen this before, even if it's their first time in a classroom, they know what it looks like in this classroom because you're starting from the ground and you are building it together, explicitly walking through those steps and allowing them the time and space to practice. It's important to use interactive modeling at the beginning of the school year to establish those expectations But as we mentioned before, it's not only for the beginning of the year. It can be used whenever students need to review or practice a routine or skill. And that might occur after a break, or when there's just a change in a routine, or when you're noticing that something is taking a lot longer than it maybe should, and you're realizing maybe we need some practice on this. It is an ongoing process that deliberately teaches, provides practice, makes visible, and reminds students of the social, academic, and behavioral expectations and norms for success in the classroom and in the school. So you got a jump start on this, but now we're going to have a chance to learn from one another. You had a moment to think and brainstorm about the different routines in your classroom that you might use interactive modeling with. Some examples are lining up, entering the classroom, filling out a lab report. You're now going to have the chance to share that knowledge with each other so we can really learn from one another and take this with us into our own learning spaces. So I'm going to give just another moment or two. You can look through the chat. You can continue brainstorming on your own, but you don't need to send them in the chat anymore because I'm going to have another space for you to keep them. That'll be a little bit more user-friendly. So go ahead and take another minute or two. What is like the most exciting one or two routines that you are going to focus on using interactive modeling to introduce? And then I'm going to show you how we are going to share those with each other. And you don't need to send them in the chat unless you really want to, because I'm going to share with you where we're going to share them for us to keep. So you should now be seeing my screen, and you should be familiar, you may be familiar with this website called Jamboard. What I'm going to do now is I am going to show you, using interactive modeling, how we are going to all be able to share our learning and learn from one another using this technology called Jamboard. This will be really important for us because then we'll be able to hold on to these and use this as we move forward and as we consider what we want to get started with in our classroom right away. So this is called Jamboard. And you'll notice on Jamboard that on the left-hand side, there are all of these different tools that you can choose from. So for the purpose of this activity, I'm going to ask you to choose this here, and it's labeled Sticky Note. When you click it, you'll notice that a box pops up that's empty. And there are different colors you can choose from if you wish. I'm going to choose yellow. And then I'm going to type in the box the routine or procedure that I am going to focus on teaching with interactive modeling. And when I'm done adding my routine or procedure, I'm going to hit save. And when I do so, you'll notice that it kind of just popped up over here on top of this other one. So in order to make space for everyone else's thinking, I'm going to move it off of that one first of all, so that this person's isn't lost. And I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, and I might even move it out of the way so that we can see as many as we can possibly see. Since there were so many great ideas in the chat, I'm having a feeling we might need 2 pages. So there is a second page here that we can move on to if you need to. So I just modeled to you what it looks like to add a sticky note to this routines and procedures board. What did you notice about the way that I did that? Go ahead and share in the chat. What did you notice about the way that I added the sticky note to this board that'll help us all to be successful? Yeah, so I'm seeing people are saying very explicit and step by step, and then I'm seeing more specific. So when we're doing interactive modeling with our students, we want them to be very specific. What did you see? So I see some of you are saying you chose a color. Yep, I chose a color. I resized it, I see somebody saying. I took care of others by moving the notes off of somebody else's rather. Yeah, so we want to break it down into the steps that are replicable for our students to do by moving through each piece and then having students reiterate the importance. So using the tab on the side to choose that sticky note, resizing it, moving it away from other sticky notes so that there is room for everyone. These are exactly what I modeled. These are the steps that I modeled intentionally so that you are now successful in utilizing this Jamboard in this community the way that we are going to. So now that you've had the chance to do that, we are going to send you this link to the Jamboard, and it's your turn to try. So just like the steps of interactive modeling, I showed you, you told us what you witnessed, and now it's your turn to try it yourself. So the link to this Jamboard is now in the chat. Go ahead and practice what you just saw. Oh, if there are too many people using okay, thank you for letting us know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen so that if you aren't able to get onto this, you can still watch what is happening. And you'll see the different routines coming in. And later at the end of this webinar, you'll have this link. Both you have it in the chat right now. You may want to hold on to it for later. Or you can watch it from here, and then later on you can go on and you'll have this to hold on to as we continue moving forward. So I'm seeing some things that are coming together or that are coming up a few times, like a turn and talk, which is great. Walking quietly in the hallways. How to have calm discussions. Transitioning. Moving classroom desks. Yes, yes, yes. That's a huge one. Knowing how and what that looks like and sounds like. Sitting on the rug. Another sounds like with independent work time. Putting away classroom materials. Reminder that we have the second page that you can start to use as well. And again, I apologize that there are too many people on this right now. You should have access to it after this. And if not, then Amber and I will take our time to type up all of these great ideas and get them to you in another way. But hopefully you can at least see it on my screen at this time. Through this activity, we're hoping that you see that the opportunities are almost endless with how you can use interactive modeling. There are so many different routines and procedures that happen consistently throughout the day that it's really important for us to consider when and how we utilize interactive modeling to support those students. I see that people are adding into the chat box, which is great. Thank you so much. There's more coming in there. We can add those on later. We'll make sure that everyone's voices are heard. Washing brushes and cups, groups in Math Center, how to get Chromebooks off the cart. Yeah, for sure. Lining up, scissors, washing hands. Yeah, we have a really solid bank now. I think we're good.
I see a lot of great ideas. And just like Alyssa said, if you can't access this link, we will try our best to put them all in one place. But please feel free, you can take a picture of it. You can, if your colleague has it, they can email it to you or email yourself the link. Or you can write down some routines and procedures that fit your classroom community that you would like to remember. And while we're doing that, Alyssa, can you share the screen one more time? So we'll give you a minute to think about how you would like to store this important information.
And as this work was happening, we were modeling how we could share the great ideas coming in. But I'd also like to note that as you're doing this with your students, you can notice the other great things that they're doing, such as moving theirs around, so that there's space for everyone, and taking care of their class community. Make sure that you're sharing those positive things about their efforts, that people were very resilient when the technology wasn't working quite properly as well. And we really appreciate everyone's flexibility and time and attention on that. And those are things that you'd want to highlight with your students as well. Let me know when you think we're good, Amber.
I sure will. All right. Alyssa, I think we're good. Remember, you do have this in the chat box. If you've lost it in the chat, I'm reposting it again so that you can save it for yourself and to return back to it. And another takeaway that we have for you, we have planning guides for interactive modeling. These planning guides can be found on our Responsive Classroom website under downloadables. And Alyssa, she is pasting those particular planning guides in the chat box. These are helpful tools when you are trying to organize your thoughts on how you want to prepare for interactive modeling with your students. If you click on these, there are 2 separate links. One of the links will have 7 steps, and the other link will have 4 steps. If you click on the link with 7 steps, those are for younger students. And if you click on the one that displays the 4 steps, those are for your older students because it fits their developmental needs. So we will give you a few minutes to click on those links to explore what these downloadables look like. And the great thing about these downloadables, you can download them, type into them. You don't have to copy and paste. Is what they say they are, downloadables, and you can type inside of them. So take a moment to look at these planning guides. And if you have any questions, just let us know. We'll give you about 30 more seconds to see which guide works for you in your classroom environment. You are welcome. And remember, you can most definitely go back to these. If this is done after our workshop, if you're so excited, you can't wait until the email for these links. They can be found on our website 24/7 up under downloadables. So as we come to a close, and think about what we've learned today, we have noticed that we do have a few Q&A questions, and we absolutely love that. Before we jump into the questions, we do want you to reflect on this particular amazing analogy. In the chat box, finish this sentence. Interactive modeling is like blank because blank. And if I were to say what interactive modeling is for me, I would put interactive modeling is like an instruction manual because it shows you how all the pieces fit together. So we cannot wait to see your amazing analogies in the chat box. We'll give you some time to think about it.
I am impressed with how quickly these are coming in.
I know. These are awesome. Interactive modeling is like a recipe for something you've always wanted to make. That is a great one because we want our students to be successful as well.
So it's like a leveler because it puts everyone on an equal playing field.
I see like a play because you are acting things out so that students know what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like. Absolutely. We'll give you a few more minutes to share. It's like a compass because it shows you the way. Great one. These are all great analogies.
These are great. Yeah.
Oh, Alyssa, the ABCs because it is foundational.
That one's great. These are all very great. Even if we're not reading yours out loud, know that we're reading them now. Yes. As they come in, we'll be returning to this because this is really insightful and valuable. So thank you.
Yes. So now we're going to answer a few questions that we have in the chat box for the Q&A before we wrap up and show the additional resources and what's coming up next in this series.
Yeah, so if you have a question that you haven't had the chance to ask us in the Q&A or that we may have missed in the chat box, make sure you go down to your toolbar and use that Q&A feature. It brings it to a different spot for Amber and myself so that we can get to those. One question that I did see come in that I wanted to address was asking about if interactive modeling is the best way to introduce the language of learning. And that's something that there are aspects of using language that you may want to do with interactive modeling, but you need to remember that interactive modeling is really for when there is one way to do something. There's another responsive classroom practice called role play, where if there are multiple solutions to act something out, you could use role play with your students so that they can see these many different acceptable ways to have those challenging conversations or to think about how to utilize language, right? So there are really great, interactive modeling you want to think about more so when you want it to be done one way and one way only. And then you can look into other practices like guided discovery in elementary school, like role play across the grades in order to use those things for more robust experiences where there are a lot of different valuable and correct ways to solve a problem.
And Alyssa, I will take, what should a teacher do if the students make interactive modeling into a joke or show? Going back to the language of learning, you want to redirect your students. Is that the way that you noticed me do it? Was that in the plan of what we were doing? So you want to use redirecting language when students feel as if it's a joke or a show. And I also see, can you also model the incorrect way? We recommend that you not model the incorrect way because you're modeling it. So it's already the incorrect way. So you're trying to teach them the correct way. Excuse me. So they already know the incorrect way. We want to have the correct way stick in their brains.
And that one speaks to me as a first grade teacher. It was fun. You know, it could be fun to put a book on your head and be like, but honestly, you don't want to share any ideas with students of things that they haven't thought about yet that are incorrect things to do with a book or with whatever utensil or tool that they're using or procedure that you're teaching. So although it can be tempting, save the comedy for other times when you're joking around with them. When you really want to show them what to do, you only want to show them what to do. Another one that I saw is, how do you handle new students who have missed so many interactive modeling sessions? I think that this one is really important, something that we touched on. A lot of what we were talking about is a full group interactive modeling session, especially at the beginning of the year, for everyone to get on the same page. But then once that is shared, once that group consensus has been made, if there is one student or a handful of students who need a refresher, whether it's because they were absent or they were a late arrival or because they're just still not getting it, it is absolutely okay and encouraged to do more smaller sessions with that student or with a smaller group of students as you can, to help them get that support that they need to get on the same page with everyone else. So while you want it to be a universal experience, you want to also meet the needs of those individual students and do those sessions with them as you see fit. So for sure, you can take this and modify it for a singular student or a small group of students. I think we may have time for one more.
One more. Let's do one more. Sometimes, let's see. Sometimes when using interactive modeling, I feel like I'm repeating myself because of a lot of the routines have the same elements. Will my students stop listening? And Alyssa, you can jump in on your experience. But when I was in the classroom, I still did it because the students will benefit from reminders. And it's always something in another step that is different than in the way that you're doing another routine or procedure, and take advantage of it. Students can capitalize on repeating some of the information because remember, they're giving constant feedback as you're talking. So you are bedding these things into their brains so that they can be successful in your classroom. And also, when you're talking about the upper grade levels, they come from different teachers. They have 4 or 5 teachers a day doing 4 or 5 things in a different way. So it's very easy to capitalize with middle school as well. And it benefits for them to know how to do, any student, elementary, middle, or high, any student, to see how they need to do something.
So I completely agree. And I think that sharing the why with the students, especially with my 5th graders, was very important. Like, the reason we're doing this is because of this. And sometimes it's, we want to get to recess faster. And those 5th graders are like, man, I need a break. I want to chat with my friends. So if you're explaining that the reason why we're learning to pack up or move the furniture is so that we can get out the door quicker, having those conversations about the why, giving the why, can be really helpful. I see one more question that I'd like to answer, and then we'll share some resources with you. This question is interactive modeling always teacher-led, or could it also be student-led? So I know that the steps were kind of spoken about quickly, but the important thing about interactive modeling is that it is interactive, but the teacher sets it up. So the teacher will be the first person that will model it, but then the students have a chance to. So whether it is with younger students, and there are the 7 steps, which I will paste here, or it is with the older steps and older students, and there are the 4 steps, which I will paste here. Either way, you're having students practice that and use their voices and their bodies to see what it looks like, and you're having them be a part of it. But you as the teacher want to set the stage for, this is what this looks like. It's so important because this is a practice. When there is one way to do it, that we need to be in control of that from the jump. But then we give the students the chance to replicate that and then to collaborate, practice, and we give them feedback on that as well. All right, let's share some resources. So we have shared with you in the chat those 2 planning guides about interactive modeling. I also shared the link to the general downloadables on our website. So if you're thinking about taking it to the next level, you can find other things there. There are also articles on our website that talk about these topics. If you would like to read more in depth about this topic or any other responsive classroom practices, you can find articles on anything that we do here. This book, Interactive Modeling by Margaret Barry Wilson, this is where that quote came from that you saw earlier. This is a really invaluable book that'll help to teach any behavior, skill, or routine that needs to be done in a specific way using interactive modeling. So if you are going to dive deeper into interactive modeling, this is for sure the book that we would recommend to you. So we also want to share our email address and our website just one more time. So we thank you all for joining us so much. Our website is here, responsiveclassroom.org. You saw the downloadables. You will hopefully take some time to explore and see those articles and other printables that are just really helpful for teachers. So can't recommend enough just going around and looking on that website. This is an email address that will get you to Amber or to myself. So if you have a question for either of us about interactive modeling or the next upcoming webinar in the series, please feel free to reach us there. And finally, we wanted to highlight the next webinars in our series. So we will be doing these on a bi-monthly basis. In November, we'll be talking about closing the class period and the day. We'll have some very talented educators joining us to share their insight about what it looks like in their classroom on a daily basis to close the class period and the day. So again, you'll receive all of this information in your email very shortly with all of those links. We will try our best to get everyone's ideas represented on that Jamboard link. And we thank you so much for joining us and hope you have a lovely rest of your day or evening, whatever time it is for where you are.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.